Hey everyone, this is the video that I will be reading through the Bleeding Kansas overview and talking about some of the maps, corresponding with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So we'll go ahead and talk through this, read through this. Feel free to follow along. Hope you all are having a great day. All right, so Bleeding Kansas overview. We're going to learn why they call it Bleeding Kansas and why it happened after the Kansas-Nebraska Act, okay? So, Bleeding Kansas overview, starting with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. In 1854, Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois introduced a bill to settle the issue of slavery in the territories. It organized the region west of Missouri and Iowa as the territories of Kansas and Nebraska. Both were north of the 36-degree 30-minute north latitude, the line that limited slavery, if you guys remember back to that line from the Missouri Compromise. Before the law, they would have been free, giving the free states more votes in the Senate and angering the South. Same issue that we keep having. Douglas hoped to make his plan acceptable to both the North and the South. He proposed repealing the Missouri Compromise and letting the voters in each territory vote on whether to allow slavery. He called his proposal popular sovereignty. This should sound familiar. We talked about it before. This idea, which is central to the American system of government, means that the people are the source of all government power. Douglas's popular sovereignty came to mean a particular method for deciding the question of slavery in a place or territory. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at a map that compares the Compromise of 1850 to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, so only 4 years later. And our questions will help guide us through it. This is the map. Real quick, let's take a look at the key. Outline this box for you guys. Oh, that last line was terrible. Let me erase that real quick. Do a better one for you. Okay, there we go. All right, so if a state is in green, this color right here, you can see it on the maps over here, that means it is free. Slavery is not, I repeat, not allowed. Okay, next we have this yellow, and it's in two places. It means both states that have slaves and territories that are open to slavery. Okay, so if we look here, these states, okay, slavery is allowed there. And over here, these territories, it is open to them. Okay, it'll be determined by popular sovereignty later. All right, now if we look over here, some of that has changed a little bit, so make sure you take a look at that. Lastly, we have this orange, and those are territories closed to slaveholding. Okay, so slavery is not allowed in those territories. That's what our key means, and that'll help us read this map as we go along. All right, so number one, what is the main difference between the Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska map? So you guys are going to look at this map and compare them. What is the biggest difference between those two? Okay, you need to determine that on your own. Number two, which is more open to slaveholding? Circle the correct one. What evidence supports your answer? Okay, so for letter A, you will circle, the Compromise of 1850 or the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So look back up here. Which one is more open to slavery or allowing slavery in those states and territories? Which one has more of those? Okay, and then B, provide evidence to back up which one you picked. All right, pretty straightforward. Number three, what idea did Senator Douglas use to create the Kansas-Nebraska Act? Okay, let's go back up to the reading for that. What idea, what political governmental idea is driving the Kansas-Nebraska Act? Okay, and then according to Senator Douglas, what determines whether a territory is a free territory or a slave territory? Okay, what will determine that? All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the conflict in Kansas. All right, here we go. Conflict in Kansas. So this is after the Kansas-Nebraska Act is passed. Supporters of both sides rushed to Kansas. Armed pro-slavery supporters known as border ruffians crossed the border from Missouri just to vote. So people are moving from Missouri to Kansas to try and make sure that Kansas becomes a slave state. When elections took place, only about 1,500 voters lived in Kansas. Okay, so when this election took place, there's only 1,500 people living in Kansas. But more than 6,000 people voted. That's 4 times the number of people living there. The pro-slavery group won. So basically, over 4,500 people came from out of the state and voted in this election, even though they weren't supposed to. Okay? Kansas established laws supporting slavery. Slavery opponents refused to accept these laws. Okay, so there's 2 factions here. One, the actual government, because they, even though it was rigged, they did vote to be a slave state, so the government establishes laws supporting slavery. But then this other group of people that are probably abolitionists, people that don't like slavery, okay, they refused to accept these laws. They armed themselves, held their own elections, and adopted a constitution banning slavery. Basically, they said, we don't accept this, we're starting our own government in Kansas. And anyways, what happened was, by January of 1856, Kansas had 2 rival governments. You have the slavery government and you have the anti-slavery government. In May of 1856, slavery supporters attacked the town of Lawrence. Let me go ahead and fix that real quick. Lawrence, an anti-slavery stronghold. Okay, so people that supported slavery, they attacked this town named Lawrence, which was very against slavery. Anti-slavery forces retaliated. John Brown led an attack that killed 5 supporters of slavery. Newspapers wrote about Bleeding Kansas and the Civil War in Kansas. In 1856, federal troops arrived to stop the bloodshed. Basically, these 2 rival governments got so violent that people were fighting and dying in the cities and in the streets, to the point that the national government, the government back in Washington, D.C., sent troops to help end all the bloodshed. Okay? Now, you guys have 3 basic comprehension questions that you need to answer based on this short little reading here. 1, who were the border ruffians? Okay, that's up here in the beginning of the reading. 2, why was the conflicts in Kansas called the Civil War in Kansas? You guys need to think about that and come up, why would it be called a civil war? All right? And 3, summarize what happened in Bleeding Kansas in 2 sentences. Just summarize, what was Bleeding Kansas? Why did they call this Bleeding Kansas? Okay? That's everything for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Once again, as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on email or over text using the Remind app. That's all. Thanks for listening.